Buying a home is an emotional process and often comes with a lot of questions. And over the last 4 years, I've had a referral link where people have actually filled out their concerns when it comes to buying a home and getting a mortgage. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. Josh and I have taken all 4,000 of these inquiries, if you will, put them into ChatGPT, and filtered them out into the most commonly asked categories as well as the most commonly asked questions when it comes to buying a home. And oftentimes, Josh, we see the same questions over and over again. So if one person has them, typically that means a lot of people have them. So let's take some time today and dive into concerns when it comes to buying a home and getting a mortgage.
Absolutely. So the number one group or the biggest group of questions is around financial preparedness and credit issues. So what are they actually asking? And it's important to remember we have, this isn't necessarily a representative sample. This is people who've got far enough into thinking they would like to buy a home to have reached out to talk to a professional. Mm-hmm. So still at that point, what we're seeing is the question, am I ready to buy? Am I prepared financially? And as part of that, where does my credit need to be? And does my credit stack up to where I want to be to buy a home and get the best terms?
Yeah. And on top of that, I mean, people are asking the question, yes, they filled out the referral form, but many people don't even know if they're in the position to buy. And I think that's what, there's obviously concern around that. And I think that's the important piece here. Like, if you're a home buyer and you're considering the process, Josh and I were talking about this prior to actually recording today. Literally, there is nothing out there. There's no college course that I'm aware of. There's nothing that you can really take the time outside of a first-time home buyer course to educate yourself, to really know what it means to buy a home from A to Z, like taking you step by step. And so you come into the process somewhat blind, and there's concern around that. And so I think the important thing, Josh, is that people are putting their concerns in there. And so it helps when people do fill out that referral link, which actually is in the description below. So if you're thinking of buying a home and you're actually having some of these questions, regardless of where you are in the process, you can click that and get connected with our team, and get guided through the process. But Josh, let's kind of touch on that a little bit deeper. If somebody is coming to you with the unknown of the process, does it look differently to you than it does to somebody that has everything, that have all their ducks in a row?
It is incredibly rare for someone to literally have all of their ducks in a row. They have a few ducks. They have a few things lined up. I'll have people call and say, hey, I have all my information in a Dropbox. I'll shoot it over to you. But they're all having questions. We talk about when you finish a pre-approval, when you go through a good pre-approval process with a good lender, what do you walk away with? What are my loan program options? Which is most likely the best for me? And then we go to the numbers. What's the max I can buy? What's my monthly payment look like? And how much cash do I need? So the questions sort of in this category are, how much money do I need? Do I have enough? What can I do to maximize my credit score? Because everyone is aware that generally, the higher your credit score goes, the better terms you're going to get, especially on conventional loans. And then another one that falls into this broad category, we have a lot of first-time buyers, a lot of younger people, and a lot of young professionals have student loans. So how are my student loans going to impact my loan options and my qualifying? So those are the big questions, and that's where it really is important to get with a professional. Like Jeb, we'll put the links in here. We've covered nearly every one of these topics. We're at 108, 109 episodes of this podcast. We've covered almost all of these in full episodes. So we're not going to go that road today. We'll put the links in the description where you can click through if one of these questions jumps out at you and you want to get it answered. But really, it is so much easier to just reach out if you're to that point. If you're thinking, hey, I want to buy next year and you want to educate yourself, absolutely. Go back and listen to those podcast episodes. But if you contact a professional, it's like, there might be 100 questions, but only 8 of them pertain to you. We can go through that in a 30-minute conversation versus listening to 50 hours of podcasts.
Well, I think there's also a subset of people, Josh, that think they want to buy a home and they're not qualified for one reason or another. And there's also a subset of folks that are home buyers, but they're 6-8 months down the road. And so it's not immediate. So I think, it's important to understand from a professional standpoint, when you have a professional on the other side of the equation, that professional should be able to at least guide you, should be able to say, hey, listen, this is what's keeping you from qualifying. Maybe it's you don't make enough money. Maybe it is your credit scores are too low. Maybe it's just whatever it is you're trying to do just isn't reasonable based on your situation. And the lender should be able to tell you that and maybe tell you how to fix it if there is an option to fix it. And at the same time, if you're early in the process and you're not ready to buy now, the lender should be able to say, hey, listen, based on today, this is how much you're qualified up to, or we can't help you right now because of X. You should work on this so that when you are ready, you're in the best position possible. So it's important to understand that.
Which takes us back to, it's never too early to talk to a lender. Let's say you are that person 8 months out, 12 months out. The big thing I get is, well, I don't want to waste your time. You're not wasting my time. That's what my job is. The number one most valuable thing I can do in a day is talk to people who are in the next 6, 12, 24 months looking to buy a home and educate them and build a relationship with them. So me or any other lender should be happy to have that conversation with you. And just like you said, Jeb, it's laying the groundwork. So hopefully you have some of your ducks in a row. Now we know what other ducks we need to target and get in line before you are ready to make that move and become a homeowner.
No, absolutely. Now the second one kind of correlates to that conversation that you're going to have with the lender, but it's concerns from home buyers wondering which loan program is right for them. Right? They've done their, YouTube research, right? They've watched some videos. They've seen loans on FHA. They've seen loans on conventional. Maybe they're in a rural area. They've seen USDA, and maybe even they're a veteran and they have an option of a VA loan. And we even get the question oftentimes, Josh, that, hey, I am a veteran, but do I really want to use my VA loan? I've got money to put down. Should I do another loan? So this is where you come into the equation and being able to provide some guidance.
Yeah. There are rules of thumb. There are, like you said, very good videos that you've done, that other folks have done. I've got one coming out this week in terms of going through the 3% down versus FHA. That's probably one of the biggest questions. And you've got a 30-minute video going through all of the pros and cons of that. So from that perspective, it's important to know the options, but there's only so much that can be gone through in a video. Even when you do that 30-minute FHA video, Jeb, it's not all of the guidelines, and you can't know the specifics of that person's situation. It's different once you reach out and talk to a professional versus just trying to educate yourself. So by all means, lay the groundwork, educate yourself with all of the great content that's out there, but then you have to take that knowledge and reach out and talk to someone. Because what I will get, Jeb, a lot of times is misconceptions in terms of someone calling and say, hey, I watched Jeb's video. I want an FHA loan. We start going through it. They have an 800 credit score. They could put 5% down. There's two of them. The mortgage insurance would be super low. And we go side by side comparison. They go, I don't want an FHA loan. But Jeb talked about 4 or 5 great things about FHA loans. and those things are true, but it's not the whole picture. You're only going to get that when you talk about the specifics of your situation, because anyone making a video, no matter how detailed, can't cover everything and can't tailor it to your exact specific situation.
No, we often say, Josh, you only know, what you don't know. And in the sense of, no, that's not how the saying goes. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah. But anyway, you get the idea where I was going with that. You don't know what you don't know is what I should have said.
I got my co-host Yogi Berra here filling in all of the famous sayings.
Hey, I caught it. I caught it myself. But what I'm saying is people have a preconceived idea of the direction that they think they should go because they've become the expert. When in fact, something I always say too is, everybody's an expert until you actually need one. Right. And so, when you need an expert, that's where the person on the other side should be able to guide you through that process, make the comparables and really guide you and take you home through that. But Josh, the third thing that comes up oftentimes in these videos is someone that is, the way ChatGPT summarized it is that they're looking for transparency and guidance through the process. So when you hear that, what does that mean to you?
Transparency in a path. People always want to know, okay, I want to buy a house. I don't know what that means. Where do I start? What comes next? Where are we at? Am I pre-approved now? Do I get a pre-approval letter? Can I go write an offer? Can I look at houses? Can I meet with the realtor? It's like almost every step of the process raises more questions. So that process of getting pre-approved and getting connected with the realtor and looking at homes should have a roadmap. Your lender and your realtor should lay that roadmap out for you so that every step in the process you can go, you are here. And you can go, all right, cool. So we made it to this process. I'm pre-approved. I have a pre-approval letter. I've got a realtor. We've looked at a few houses, haven't written an offer. And now I know that what comes next, writing an offer, getting an offer accepted, opening escrow, getting disclosures, getting loan approval, getting loan docs. That when I hear transparency, it's someone who will take the time to walk you through what that process looks like and where you are. Because again, no one, even a first-time buyer has never done this. Even a second-time buyer, average tenure in a home is 11 or 12 years right now. It's been a long, long time before you've done it or since you have done it. So in that context, you don't have knowledge of exactly how it works. Every 10, 12 years, if you do it, the technology has changed, the process has changed, the forms have changed, the market can change. You can be a buyer's market, a seller's market. So just having people on your side that can answer your questions, but anticipate the questions that you either forgot to ask or should be asking and didn't know, and give you that roadmap so you have this certainty as you're going through the process of where you're at and what comes next.
That's where channels like this, podcasts like this really come into hand, because we're here basically providing free information to guide you through that process. And that's why I'd like to ask a favor. If you find any value in the content here at all, do us a favor and hit the thumbs up. If you're listening on Spotify, you can rate us, review us, or wherever you listen to podcasts. That helps out the algorithm. And if you like content like this, you can subscribe by clicking the button and or following us on those platforms as well. So that's all we're asking for in this process. And at the same time, Josh, shameless plug. If you're looking to connect with Josh, you're looking to connect with me, you want to get connected with a professional, there's a link in the description below where you can work with us directly, and we'd be more than happy to guide you through that process. Ultimately, we want to create educated home buyers, but at the same time, we want to help you in that process as well. So, Josh, a lot of people, across the United States, not just locally where we here, have interest in first-time home buyer type of assistance, right? There's always questions around what's a first-time home buyer loan? What loan can I get because I'm a first-time home buyer? What down payment assistance programs are there for me? What, California Dream for All? There's all of these different questions around assistance in the process. So how do you navigate that from a mortgage standpoint?
So this one's interesting because for me, being in California, probably about 2 out of every 3 loans we do are in the state of California. Our assistance programs aren't great here. So when I have that conversation with someone in California, when California Dream for All is available, it's a fantastic program if you can get the money. The others are not all that great. But when I talk to someone down in Texas and they say, hey, I'm looking in Dallas-Fort Worth has a program that is great, fantastic, and fairly easy to qualify for. So the thing that's important on this is the big national channels. Jeb, you have 100,000 subscribers. On your channel, you can't go and do content on every local regional program. So there are people in those markets, maybe they don't have a big channel, but they've done an overview of that. A lot of these housing and finance agencies do their own videos. They're not the most entertaining. They're not the best and fun to watch, but they can walk you through that. And then you have the information and can take that to your loan officer and ask that question. But probably one of the big misconceptions here, Jeb, is that people hear, oh, you don't want to do an assistance program, so you just poo-poo it and say it's no good. Say, no, I don't care. If it's right for you, it's right for you. Our program here in California is expensive and results in a second and most often a third mortgage against your property that limits your options going forward, whether that be refinancing, repayment on reselling. And when we pencil it out, I had a client, Jeb Lupe, a famous viewer of the live show that you helped a couple of years ago. She sends over some numbers from her brother a few weeks ago that he's looking at an assistance program. And I look at it and says, what's the assistance? It says he needs $28,000. We ran the numbers on an FHA at a 0.5% lower interest rate. I could give him a big enough lender credit that he could get in for $28,000. So for $1,000 more, no second mortgage, no third mortgage, and within $1,000 of the cash to close in a 0.5% lower interest rate. So again, we talk about numbers never lie. Some of these assistance programs around the country are amazing. Some of them are terrible. And it's almost like there's this belief that it's great and it's out there and there's programs. So if you know in your area there's a grant program that is a true grant, that they will give you money for down payment, give you money for closing costs, by all means, check it out. But make sure whoever is offering you that loan shows you the equivalent apples to apples comparison. For Cal HFA, it's often an underlying FHA loan. Well, what does the FHA loan look like without Cal HFA assistance? So you can see how much less money do I need with the assistance and what am I giving up for that? So again, not to say they're bad programs. Some of them are awesome, but you got to do your research and work with someone who can show you both ways to make sure that it is the right option for you.
Josh, when I hear you say that, I go back to what some of the things that we covered earlier with regards to people concerned about loan types and eligibility and that sort of thing. And then you just went over that. What I get from that is that your lender should be providing you with all available options, right? And then ultimately letting you make a decision. One of the options, two of the options might not even make any sense at all, but it helps for clarity. It helps you know that, hey, listen, I've covered all my bases here, and this is still the right path for me based off of this information. Whereas somebody's just giving you one, ask them, do I qualify for any other options? Do I, even if they don't make sense, do I? And then let that conversation kind of take, on it in and of itself.
Well, Jeb, let me give you a great example of that. I have a listener in Tennessee that we're working with, and he came to me. He had gone through the pre-approval process with two different lenders. So he's basically telling me, we need to do FHA. I want to do FHA. This is it. He calls me over the weekend or texts over the weekend and says, hey, just got news that the credit card that we paid off, my score went up to 734. Will that improve the terms that I'm going to get? I said, no, you were already above 680 with FHA. We're already getting the best terms. If it were conventional, it would make some difference. So then he goes with the obvious thing. Well, should we be doing conventional? No one had ever even walked through it. They had just told him FHA. And when he got to me, he told me he wanted FHA. So I never went any further with it. So what did we do? We did a side-by-side comparison. I know in my head, those numbers still was not going to make sense on a minimum down for them with the conventional loan. But we ran it and look at it side by side. And he goes, okay, yeah, you're right. I can see that. But someone should have done that at the very beginning, because no one, not me, a loan officer should never tell you, oh, you don't want that option. They should show you the difference so that you know why you do or don't want any specific option.
Good stuff. Now, the next one that comes up, Josh, is concerns around finding the right property. It could be finding the right property because there's not a lot of inventory. It could be finding the right property because you're looking for something in a specific school district or whatever it is. But there's always concerns that people fill out like, hey, I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to get what I want to get. Maybe I don't qualify for enough home or whatever. And this is, a conversation that I had this morning with a mutual friend of ours who is selling his home and buying another home. And he sent me a couple properties, and one that he had sent me yesterday, he kind of, before, we'd even gone into much detail, he kind of responded back to me and said, I kind of feel like it's like staying in my current home. I'd be going through a remodel, just as exactly what I'd be doing here. And kind of led me to believe that it's probably not the right property for him, just based off what he said. Well, this morning follows up and says, hey, I think that property might work. And so my response back to him was, we only have two rules. The first rule is that you can't fall in love with a property until you actually have the keys in your hand. And the reason I say that is because I have a lot of clients over the years that fall in love with a property and it doesn't get accepted, or some cases it does get accepted. Something comes back, property falls out, and they're heartbroken and they can't get over it. And it's just one of those things that they're always comparing it to that property. So it's very difficult. It's a difficult thing to do, but it's kind of words to live by. And the second is honestly the most important thing, I think, during the process is that you don't settle. Settling because you can't find the right home. Settling because, we often say buying a home is an emotional process and justified logically, which means that during the process, emotions are high, you're excited, families, in this case, blended family coming together gets a new start in their new home. It's exciting. And then you just want to make it happen. Therefore, you're willing to overlook things that were originally concerns of yours just to make that happen. And what I often see is maybe not immediately, but down the road, there's some regrets in that decision. Maybe, you got into it too quickly and weren't thinking about the process because it was emotional. So, I sent that back to him and the response was, hey, I appreciate that. And then he explained what he meant by now he's changed his mind a little bit on that property. And I get it. I want to be very clear in the process that if it takes us 60 days, 90 days, 120 days for you to find that's okay. I'd rather take the time than you get caught up and do it very, very quickly. And then you later have regrets. And then maybe you look back on me, we're friends, and it's like, hey, Jeb, like I regret it because you didn't stop me or whatever. And so just one of those things. Having concerns about properties is completely normal. And that's why it's important to have your non-negotiables, the things that you aren't willing to negotiate on. Maybe it's bedrooms, maybe it's bathrooms, maybe it's the location of the property, whatever it is. But then be, willing to compromise on some things. Maybe condition is one of those things you compromise on just because condition can be changed. You can't pick up a property and move it in most cases. So that's one of the things. If that's important, you keep that in there. But some of the other things that can be changed, you don't like the paint color, you hate the flooring. I'm not buying that house because of that. Hey, you got to look past some of that stuff, especially in markets where inventory is tight. So that's really, when I say property condition, that's what comes to mind. Josh, anything on your side?
Just back to your point of don't settle. I hear people will say, especially during COVID, hey, I went and bought a car. They didn't have anything that I liked. I just had to buy this one. I'm like, a car, you're going to have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. You're going to pay a lot of money. You're going to spend time in it every day. Like I would never settle on a car. I'm going to wait till I get the one that I want. A house is that times 10. You're going to be there 12, 15, 20 years. You're going to spend hours and hours and hours. The majority of your life, or at least away from work, is going to be spent there. You can't sacrifice and deal with something where I'm just like, oh, I'll just put up with it, because it will bother you more once you get in. So take the time. Never let your professionals, either on the real estate or the mortgage side, pressure you. Hey, we've written too many offers. Hey, this is the 900th pre-approval letter I've written. This is important for you. Make the right decision. And if it means your realtor showing you a lot of houses, your loan officer writing you 1,000 pre-approval letters, that's just how it goes.
It is, because sometimes it takes 20 homes to find the right one, 20 offers. And sometimes you make an offer with the first one and it gets accepted. So it averages out. And if your realtor's not willing to do it, then find somebody that is. The next one, Josh, is, I would say out of all of the things that we've talked about today, this one is probably the most common, which is around income and employment. People have concerns that, hey, listen, I changed jobs. I'm wondering if I don't, do I make enough money? I was laid off, or I'm on disability, I'm on Social Security. All of those concerns around income and job stability and employment. So how is that addressed during the process?
So here's the paradox on this one, Jeb. If I have someone call and have a concern and ask a specific question about whether their income is going to be okay, it's about an 80 to 90% chance it's going to be okay. The person who calls and says, oh, I'm good, I make $200,000 a year, we start looking at it and we're like, well, you're self-employed and you've been self-employed for 6 weeks and you had one sale of $20,000 that would equate to $200,000 a year, but we have zero history of it. Those are the people that we worry about. So if you're in that camp of thinking through, hey, have I been on my job long enough? The big ones that come up are, I made a job change. Is that a problem? The same line of work, it's not a problem. Hey, I was out of work for 2 months between jobs. Generally, not a problem. With some loan programs, it might be an issue. But if you're thinking of it, you're probably the type of conscientious, diligent person that is not going to be an issue. But always bring it to your loan officer's attention, because they can tell you right up front. We get a lot of questions about self-employment. How is my self-employment looked at? Because you have a lot of flexibility between your gross income and your net income of what expenses are there and what you're going to declare and write off. So I have a client right now, has not filed his 2023 returns. As soon as we get off recording here, I'm going to jump in and look at the draft returns and make sure that we are on track. It looks like it's going to be fine, but we're going to review that. So if you have concerns along this front, whether it's how long you've been on the job, how long you've been out of school and started a job, whether you're self-employed, if you've been self-employed long enough, do we need 1 year of tax returns, 2 years of tax returns? Just bring those questions to your lender. And another reason why it's never too early to start that conversation, because if we need to wait, if we need to get some things lined up, you have time to do it. If you wait until the perfect house pops up, problematic, or could be problematic.
And along those same lines, if you have questions about income and employment, having a conversation sometimes doesn't go deep enough, right? If especially when it comes to income specifically and whether or not you're going to qualify for X, you need to submit paperwork. A conversation's not going to do it. That's like a pre-qual, right? You need a pre-approval. You need somebody to comb through it, look at the actual tax returns, look at the pay stubs, look at, W-2s, all of that to verify the information you're being told. I mean, when I did loans, Josh, people would call me and say, hey, I make $75,000 a year. And you're like, okay, $75,000 a year. You do the quick math, whatever. And then you get their pay stub and they make like $65,000. Well,
It was close.
I'm going to make $75,000 when I get the raise, and that's going to happen next week. Okay, but that's not the conversation. It's like, what do you make right now? So go that extra step, get pre-approved. There's no cost. It shouldn't be a cost in most cases to do it. And it'll confirm that you're actually good to go. Josh, now this is the big one, the one our crystal ball is foggy at the moment, but it's concerns around rates, market conditions, addressing the question of buying now versus later. What are we thinking right now, when it comes to rates, when it comes to conditions and affordability?
Well, let's zoom out. This was a very easy conversation for the better part of 40 years. From 1982 to 2022, rates went down. If you didn't like what rates were, wait 18 months, wait 36 months. They'll be lower. And that was the case for 40 years. We've seen a big spike over the last couple of years. We talk about on the live show all the time. We have data from really smart people on both sides of the equation. Two of the people who I read their morning updates with all the economic data hits in the morning before 10 a.m. West Coast time, usually before 8 a.m. And they go and summarize it. And half the time they're looking at the same information and walking away with totally different conclusions. Yeah. And these are really smart people that I both respect their opinions. So we're in a very cloudy period where it is hard to say what's going to happen going forward. The Fed themselves expects to cut rates later in the year. They expect inflation to get under control. They expect rates to move lower. So the question really is when and how much. So it makes decision making a little bit more difficult right now. I would say if it makes sense and the time is right for you now and you can afford with current rates, you do always have that opportunity to refinance. You can change a rate. You can't change the house. You can't get a house. If a house is available today that's the perfect home for you and you feel like you want to wait 3 months because rates are lower, the house is probably not going to be available. A change in rate, a change in loan program always is possible. So it's not to say marry the house, date the rate, but the rate is not permanent. The house is at least semi-permanent. So from that perspective, that's a big equation. The flip side of it, Jeb, is people wanting to know, are we going to crash? What if I buy and this is the absolute peak? So how we talk a couple of things, Jeb. All real estate is local. You can't answer that question on a national level, but how do you go through that with clients or viewers to your channel that are reaching out from around the country?
It's not easy. I mean, typically the people that are worried about the crash are typically the people that are wanting something to happen. Oftentimes, or needing something to happen. Oftentimes, I think there's no easy way to answer the question, but I think the easiest way for me to address it in a very short period of time is real estate over time has been proven to increase in price because of inflation, because of scarcity, because of demographics. A lot of the things that we talk about all the time, that's not going to change. So over time, home prices are going to continue to increase. Does that mean that the house next, that you're looking at today is going to be more expensive next month? Not necessarily, but it could be. And so I think as long as you're thinking from a longer term perspective, you're not sacrificing on what you need in a home and where you see your life in the next 5 to 7 years, and you're comfortable with the payment, you got some money in the bank, you're not like putting everything you have just to make it happen and have nothing to fall back on, then I don't see a problem with the decision at all. In fact, I think it's probably the right decision for most people if it's the right time in their life. Now, for the person that's just turning 18, 20 years old and they're worried about, the future and, hey, I got to get a house now or I'm not, I don't know that that's the right time, right? You need financial stability, you need job, relationship, all of those things in your life to be able to make that decision. So if you have those, fantastic. You're probably ready to buy a home. If you're not, then maybe you wait until the right opportunity. There's nothing wrong with waiting. There's nothing wrong with renting, as long as you understand what that means and you're okay with the potential of things changing over time. So really all I got, Josh. And that really kind of summarizes the majority of the questions that we get. I mean, personal circumstances came up as one of the things, but that really is related in everything that we've talked about.
Yeah. And it's kind of one-offs. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I'm going through a divorce. What are my options? Hey, we had a bankruptcy 18 months ago. Hey, I'm starting a business next year. So it's not things that are really applicable to anyone. There's always some people who are going to have unique circumstances. And really the only answer there is reach out to a realtor, reach out to a lender, reach out to a pro as early as possible and start that discussion and go through your options.
Yeah, I think in summary, if I could summarize everything we said here today, Josh, is that if you have questions, just reach out to a professional, somebody that can guide you through it, can answer your questions in detail in a way that you can understand them. If somebody's just brushing it off, as nothing, maybe you have another question, or maybe it really is nothing. But either way, talking to a pro, which you can find one, with working with us, which there's that link in the description below where you can get connected. And we will, be happy to walk you through that process and ultimately get your questions answered. So
Jeb,
Josh,
let me close one loop on that.
Please.
Because this is funny that you and I have never discussed this on the live show, on this show. One of the number one questions that I get is, okay, so if I go through this process, if I send you my information, if we talk, if we review it, how much do I owe you? How much does this cost? Mm-hmm. There's no cost. Your realtor doesn't make any money until you close a purchase with them. Your lender does not make any money until you close a loan with them. So it's weird because most people don't think of their job in that way. They hey, I go to work in 8 hours. I earn so much money. We need to build those relationships, get you the answers and the knowledge that you need. So there's no upfront cost. So don't let that be an impediment. Well, I don't want to reach out because I don't have any money to pay them. Again, there is no immediate reward. It's building that relationship and that confidence and that trust with you that we are the best option to get you what you want, that you've been heard, and that we're giving you the best answers to get you where you need to go to get into a home eventually.
And Josh, you said something that I'm going to confirm for the listener, and that's that we are the best option for you. So Josh and I are the best option for you. So if you're ready to buy a house, reach out to us directly. In the meantime, prepare, put yourself in the best position possible so that you can buy right, borrow smart, and build wealth. Till next time, adios.
Amigos.